What's a good word, everyone? It's your boy DKB here. I just want to say thanks for all the support. The channel's been steadily growing, and the number you see below, you can drop a text, shoot a voicemail, any ideas, topics, collabs, etc. you guys want to see. I'll include them in future videos and live streams, and I'll catch you again. Be easy. What's the good word, Jets fans? It's your boy DKB here, and I want to hone in on Justin Fields because things could be getting drastically scary heading into week one if you buy into the narrative that here we go again, another quarterback that was supposed to have a ton of potential, but ultimately can't process and or play quarterback in general at a high level, let alone average, which would be probably good enough considering the defenses we generally build in most cases to win a decent amount of games, if not be in a ton more. And so there's nothing that we've seen, in my opinion, over this preseason so far to really dispel that. Now, if you want to say the training camp practices maybe mean more than preseason and all that kind of stuff, fine, shoot out an argument for it. But as this game wrapped up, we started to see a lot more people come out highlighting concerns throughout training camp. And this isn't new to us, right? It feels like we get all of the rainbow sunshine stories and all that during OTAs and during training camp. And then once the season starts to fail, and generally pretty early, we start to hear the beat reporters come out and say, well, you know, from what we were seeing and indications and signs and all this kind of stuff. So what I mean by that is through 3 series, we've seen Justin Fields go 4 of 9, which is a 44.4% completion percentage for 46 yards and a 5.1 average through the air. Not great by any means, and you can definitely make the argument that the 3rd and 4th string quarterbacks, Adrian Martinez and Brady Cook, looked like they ran a better brand of offense than what Justin Fields did with the starters, with them having less talent on the offensive side of the ball, right? Obviously, they're going up against, 2nd, 3rd, 4th string defenders as well, which helps. But still, overall, it just looked like things function a lot more effectively with them. And there's commentary that's coming out, which actually I want to get into that in a little bit. But to go back to what I was kind of mentioning about beat writers coming out and mentioning general concerns from training camp, Zack Rosenblatt had pointed out something to the effect of, with his time watching training camp, there wasn't a ton of throws made deep or even to the intermediate level, which means you were seeing a ton of running plays and or it was the passing attack was focused around the short area of the field. So behind the line of scrimmage and or let's assume 5 to 7 yards, maybe even shorter, right? And I think you've seen a lot of those same elements in the preseason. You think about the Justin Fields to Garrett Wilson connection, which according to a lot of the reports over the course of OTAs and training camps seemed like it was bright, right? It's probably the few rare times we've seen deep ball passing and all that kind of stuff. But 0 for 4, I believe, targeting Garrett. A bad out route, for example. I think like 2 bad slants. I recall the one from the Giants, for example, where maybe pass interference, but in general, kind of also just felt like a badly placed ball, slightly behind him, didn't quite hit him in the numbers. And then there's 2 more out there, but overall, the screen, which was bad, right, got drilled into the dirt, bounced into his hand, but it just hasn't really looked good. And it doesn't matter who he's targeting, but especially if you can't get onto the same page as your number 1 wide receiver, who also, by the way, you've had a ton of chemistry with, it's concerning. So when I hear things like Rosenblatt coming out and mentioning, well, this has actually been a pretty strong replication, minus probably all of the errant passes and stuff like that, of what we've seen in training camp, this may just be who the New York Jets are. So when Justin Fields comes out post-game press conference and he's mentioning he has no major concerns, he'll always say that there's room for improvement no matter win, loss, draw. That's not necessarily a concern, but you should recognize that things don't look as effective as they are. Let's say we can't reasonably get off some deep and intermediate shots. That's just the way the defense is playing. Every other team seems to be figuring out a way to at least get a shot in. But hey, give them the benefit of the doubt. Even then, there should be some way for you to easily get some of these short passes off, whether it's you passing to Breece Hall and Braylon Allen, whether it's you targeting Garrett Wilson, and hopefully some of the other guys can step up. We know wide receiver 2 through 6, let's just call it, doesn't look great, but there's enough reasonable options. Mason Taylor coming back, for example, the only catch of the day for Justin Fields. There should be easy ways for you to be able to go out there and pick up your 3 to 4 yards to at least keep us in a consistent third and short situation. And then it's a completely different argument at that point if we're not converting third and shorts at a high level. But Aaron Glenn's talked about not schematics, but he's talked about the playing style, and we've heard the emphasis on the run game, going back to ground and pound, and ultimately the quarterback doing, I feel like, again, the Rex Ryan program, and maybe you're just dusting it off and saying this is version 2.0, and we've heard this before. This is kind of the go-to, I guess, with Aaron Rodgers and name any other quarterback in the last decade. But what this means, I don't think the preseason games, I feel like, have given us a strong vision of what that's actually going to look like on Sundays. So there's two paths, in my opinion, to believe here. One is the preseason we know is a time where many offensive coordinators and even DCs, they're scaling back a ton of the playbook. It's very vanilla everything, and you're not going to get the ripples and the wows and the ooh la la effects and all that kind of stuff. But the fact that it seems like we're almost trying to hide Justin Fields, at this point I would have said just give him the first half, right? And let's see if we can figure out something, especially because a lot of the starting level players and stuff like that for the Giants still ended up being out there. But there's that program, right? Maybe Tanner Engstrand and Aaron Glenn are really keeping everything buttoned up, or we're going to see a completely different looking offense come week 1 versus Steelers. The second route is this is actually who we are, and at this point we just aren't executing at an effective level. And what this looks like is we are going to be seriously committed, right? I think we ran 40 times in the first week, and prior to needing to try to come back against the Giants, we would have ran a ton more then. And even then, we still ended up running a pretty decent amount. This will be who we are, right? We're going to be committed to the ground. Justin Fields is also going to be an extension of that ground game, right? So, of course, throw him in there. His only touchdown of the offseason coming via his feet. And we're going to ask him to not make mistakes through the air. But you've seen, as with the Giants, and I imagine this is what every team is going to do until we find a consistent way to get an answer. This is, once again, Breece Hall's, second year in the league where, and I don't mean that literally, but I mean him in year 2 where I think we've seen this more prevalent. Teams are going to come up, they're going to play the box, they're going to stack the box. He's going to see 7, 8, 9-man boxes where unless someone makes a mistake, unless we execute elite blocking, he's going to have to force 1 or 2 guys to miss, maybe even 3, run some people over. Same thing with Braylon Allen, and we'll have to pick up chunk yardages that way. Through the air, it looks pretty scary, especially. We've been hanging our hats on the fact that Justin Fields and Garrett Wilson should be able to go off whenever they're generally looking to sync up with each other. And that hasn't been the case this preseason. Someone mentioned it being concerned the first week, and I shrugged it off as, well, training camp practices, it seems like things are fine and dandy. Let's just play it out. But 2 weeks and you haven't got a single completion with your top target, that is going to be a concern. That's not defenses being overly committed to taking him out and there's not another answer on the roster. This is overall, top to bottom, and I just mean all 11 players on the offense. This is just total failure. Whether guys can't get open for anybody not named Garrett Wilson, and or Justin Fields processing, and or like you've seen the one play, a high snap in a situation where you need to have an expedited play. It's a screen pass. You've seen the defenders jump on it immediately when the Justin Fields was still trying to play tip drill just to corral the ball in. Things need to be a lot more smoother. There needs to be, if you want to operate short passing attack, you got to go quick, no huddle. Like, there's a lot of different things to pull off, and we're still also, I don't mind a ton of the motion that we've been seeing, for example. I think it's actually been good. And whether Justin Fields is actually using this to do some level of top-tier processing or not is another story, but we need to be able to have this momentum and utilize this to effect, right? Because it should be allowing, right? You're seeing Garrett Wilson go into motion and, have these free releases and stuff. That should give you easy options to go out there and dump something off, and hopefully it's just an elite yards after catch offense that we end up being built around the ground game. But none of that has happened. So where do we go from here? I don't know. I don't even think a lot of people's answer is, well, now we got to go and try to get Terry McLaurin or someone of that kind, right? Amari Cooper still being out there in free agency, I believe. Does that actually matter, right? If we're going to be so committed to the ground game, there's already going to be, let's say, less than 20 passes a game being thrown through the air if he continues to look like he's being hidden, or Justin Fields being hidden, or things just aren't working. And yes, it gives you a suitable option. But if we're having a hard time being able to get the ball to anyone, just in general, and that's just what the tape shows so far, it's not really going to matter who else you throw out there. You can give yourself a prime Larry Fitzgerald to line up with Garrett Wilson, and it still feels like there's going to be struggles. So I'm taking a deep breath here just because I do think with what we've seen out of some of the training camp practices and even out of preseason, you're seeing guys get open. Hasn't worked out in Justin Fields' favor, but with Brady Cook and Adrian Martinez, we've seen their ability to go out there and attack deep or intermediate, have a chance to at least see that some guys are getting open and it's just errant passes or bad execution, being hurried, etc., etc. So we'll see. I'm not ready to totally quit on it, but I think the brand of football that we're going to see is ultimately going to be very boring, and it might even be very vanilla, but that's going to require executing at a strong level and have unwavering commitment. And so it's not going to look great in the stat sheet. It's probably not going to look great in the first half, for example. But when guys get tired in the third and fourth, hopefully that breaks some things open, and you're assuming you're going to be either ahead of the game or you're going to be within the game, right? Tie balls or just under one possession, and then you can finally start to break some things loose. So we'll see. I don't know. I'm up in the air on this whole conversation because I don't think that Justin Fields can be completely written off. And in the same token, he has to prove something, right? In the preseason games, at least would have gave you some indication that, hey, there is a potential change in what we've been seeing, over his first handful of years. But let me know what you guys think. Justin Fields preseason so far. I'll catch you guys again. Peace.